Hello, everyone. Everyone
Good afternoon,
is
everyone.
coming into the room quite quickly. Very quickly, actually. Welcome. I'll kick off shortly. Just wait to get the numbers up a little bit. Thank you for everyone who's so on time. We'll probably give it 1 or 2 minutes before we officially kick off. We do like to keep these sessions on time and short and sweet. Still 1 or 2 people coming in every now and again. Welcome to the people who have just joined. I am hosting today, and I am just going to leave it for another minute while we make sure everyone gets in. We're expecting around 40 people, I think. Please mute yourself if you haven't already. Okay, guys, I think we're going to kick off. I think we're not yet at full numbers, but people can catch up when they join. Welcome to everyone. I think I've seen some names that I recognize and lots of names that I don't recognize. So for those of you who have not joined one of these sessions, there are Bytes and Bytes lunchtime sessions, and we try and do them once a month, once every 6 weeks, sometimes once every 2 months if we're not feeling very imaginative. And what they're about is very short, succinct, informative sessions that are tackling a couple of, well, not a couple, like as many issues as we can tackle. They are slightly technical. This is generally not none of our sessions are super high level or fluffy, if I can call it that. We tend to actually get into some nitty-gritty. We love doing demos. We love seeing portals or reports or logging into actual systems. And the reason for that is that most of you are doing this stuff yourselves or wanting to do this stuff yourselves. So we're trying to make it as applicable to you as possible. Yeah, we also, like I said earlier, we're trying to keep it on time. We value your time. We don't want to go into the workday too much. Hopefully by now you've got your Uber Eats meal in front of you. Again, for those of you who haven't joined, we send a voucher usually on the morning of the event, and you use that voucher to get a meal on us. And the idea is that you can hopefully learn from us while eating a meal on us. And as you guys have already figured out, you leave your cameras off, especially if it's a messy meal. It tends to distract the presenters. But if you're eating neatly, feel free to put your camera on. I'm your host, Colin, one of the directors of Turrito. Our presenter today is also from Turrito, which is unusual. Usually our presenters are from vendors, disties, partners, that sort of thing. Robin is one of our solutions architects, and today he is demoing something called our Insights Report, which is a uniquely Turrito report. You can't get it anywhere else in the world. You can't buy it. Turrito customers that have Microsoft services with us get this for free. It's part of the value add. In fact, I may as well mention, as a lot of you know, the Microsoft licensing world is pretty commoditized. It's whether you buy business standard from Bob or Mary. It's the same business standard. So Turrito does everything we can to sort of add value and make it useful, so that our business standard is hopefully a bit better than our competitors. This Insights report is one of the examples of that. Robin is the inventor of the Insights report. Who better to demo it today? He's demoed it to lots of our customers many, many times. Hopefully the demo gods go easy on him and he doesn't crash or burst into flames. And we're gonna do a 30-minute session more or less. We will have Q&A at the end. If you have a really burning question and you can't sit still, you're welcome to raise your hand. Robin may or may not stop and take your question. Definitely at the end of the session, we will take your questions. I'll take your questions. Robin will take your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. We try, like I said, to be as concise as possible. So on 45 minutes or thereabouts, we're going to end. Sometimes it carries on. You're welcome to join. You're welcome to stay with us. You can also just jump off if you're under the pump at work and need to jump off. Feel free. Also, sorry, one last thing is we love ideas for future Bytes and Bytes. So if you've got any ideas for us or a topic you'd like us to cover, send it to us. You can put it in the chat. You can email it to your account manager. Whatever way you want to send it to us, please do. We usually book them out 3 months in advance. So the more the merrier. Without further ado, Robin, I'm going to hand over to you to explain what the Insights report does and actually show it to us.
Cool. Thanks, Colin. Hello to everyone that's joined us this afternoon. So just a bit of background from my side. I started working with 365 probably around 2012 already. At that time, it essentially was just Exchange Online and SharePoint. So there really wasn't much else going on there. But we've seen the beast that it's grown into over the last couple of years. And with that, there's obviously a lot of additional complexity as Microsoft have added other services on, like security and compliance and Intune for like mobile device management. There are all sorts of different teams within Microsoft that add these services there, and they don't always all talk to each other. So there's not a sort of central dashboard where we can find a lot of the information that we're looking for. So sometimes we need to go into the admin center. We can find some of the reports there. Other times, if you're looking for certain sign-in logs or activity logs, you've got to then log into Entra. If you want to find stuff on Intune, you've got to then log into that portal. Some of the stuff isn't available on a dashboard. You then have to use Microsoft Graph to be able to get that data, or and sometimes that data is not there either. So then you have to look at the certain PowerShell modules that they've created to extract all that data. So it can be sometimes very complex and painful to get all the data that you want to get an overview of what's happening in your tenant. And I always found that very frustrating. So my goal was to try have a nice high-level overview of everything that's going on in your environment. It's not necessarily a security report in terms of like, this is exactly what you need to fix. It's just, this is what's happening in your environment. And once you know that, then you can start taking steps to clean up, inactive users, your licensing. Then you can start looking at the security metrics that you need to implement and go from there. The other thing that I find when we speak to a lot of IT managers is that a lot of the time they just don't have the capacity to manage all these things. So they're managing Microsoft, you're managing your on-prem environment, you're managing users, printers, making sure the generator's got petrol or diesel. Sometimes you're responsible for fixing the toaster. So it can be very difficult to keep tabs on everything that's going on, especially in an ecosystem like Microsoft. I was looking at one report and they said something, there's in the region of 10,000 different configuration elements in Microsoft across their various services in 365. So that's an awful lot of stuff to try to keep track of. So the idea is to give everyone a high-level overview of what's happening in your environment, and then from there you can hopefully make informed decisions and have a roadmap of where you would like to go on your 365 journey. It's there might be some quick wins, but a lot of times it's stuff that will take a few months and projects to implement and get sorted out as well. So I just want to now share my screen, and then I'll just take you through what this report can show us. So I hope everyone can see that now. Okay, cool. So the main page of the report that we've got here extracts a bunch of insights that we've collected with all the data, and then just highlight some things that we maybe need to look at. So for instance, in this case, we have a user that's got an administrator role, but they don't have MFA on it. So that's obviously quite a critical security risk to the business. And then we can see other things like admin accounts that don't have MFA registered. And this could be for a number of reasons. If you've got an on-prem environment, maybe you're syncing service accounts across from your on-prem directory that shouldn't be there, or you've got users that have left, but their accounts haven't been disabled. So that just allows us to now go through that data and identify why we're seeing so many users like that. We're also able to see applications that have high privilege permissions. This is quite a big thing these days with AI, and especially note takers. Every second person's got a different note taker app that they want to add into their meeting. And a lot of these are actually got quite a lot of high privileged permissions into your environment as well. So how do we control that? If we look at things like email security, are we securing that properly? Do we have the correct SPF, DMARC, DKIM keys in place? If we're using the Defender for endpoint, we can also now see if we've got any unhealthy endpoints. What's our license efficiency like? In this case, we can see that there's quite a few licensed users that haven't had activity in the last 3 months. So maybe these users have been offboarded, but their licenses have never been removed. So it's always good to review that. Maybe there's a savings in your licensing the next time you come up for renewal. Then we can also see if there's mailboxes or SharePoint, OneDrive accounts that are running low on storage. That need to be looked at before it becomes an issue with your end users. Then if we dive into it a bit more, there's several tabs at the top of the report. So if we go into tenant info, for example, here we'll get a list of all our domains, and then we'll be able to see what's configured on each domain. Is your SPF configured? Is your DKIM configured? Do you have DMARC? Is your DMARC record sitting in reject? Who's it with? And there you can also identify if there's any gaps potentially in your security with your domain score. Then if we look at Entra ID, so there's quite a few sub tabs in here. So here is where we're going to see a list of all the users that don't have MFA registered in the environment. We're going to look at admins and the different roles that they've got assigned. Are there any that don't have MFA? How many guest users do we have in the environment? Inactive users. The baseline that I use in this is anyone that hasn't signed in for more than 180 days, for example. We also then can take a look at your different conditional access policies, and then your app registrations and the permissions that you've got linked to those ones. So if we look at admin roles, there we can see the specific user that hasn't got MFA enabled on there. We can see whether they are using privileged identity management, what types of MFA they're using, and what roles each of these users has got in the environment as well. And like I said, just guest users. So this might be useful just in terms of cleaning up the amount of identities that you've got based on when last they were created or when last these users actually signed in there, and what group memberships they potentially are part of as well. Then inactive users is a list of member and guest users, but you can filter that by member type as well. Another nice thing that I enjoy about this report is any of these tables that you see here, you're able to export into either Excel or CSV as well. So you can then go and look at that data and manipulate it the way you want to then, or filter it further if you want to there. So this gives us the last sign-in date and how many days it's been since they last signed in, and that can give us more data on whether that user should be removed or not then as well. Conditional access is also a very important one that we should be reviewing. What policies have we got in place? Are they still correct? Are we still excluding the correct users? Do we have users in policies that shouldn't be there? In addition to this, once we look at the data here, we can also then start looking at tools to test those policies. Are they doing what we think they're doing? Are they excluding the wrong users, for instance? And then we can tweak those policies from there. If we look at app registrations, this is a list of all your custom apps that you would have created for certain purposes, and then the different permissions that they might have had in there. Something that I find quite useful though is if you go down all the way to your service principals. So a service principal is essentially like a service account that's linked to any enterprise application or registered app that you have in the environment. The majority of these are going to be Windows, Azure, Office related. But when you start sorting either by delegated permissions or app permissions, we can see sort of all the other applications in there and the different permissions that they've got. So it's always good to review and see whether these applications should still be in your environment and the type of permissions that they've got. Like I mentioned, a big one that we've seen now is note-taker apps and the high privilege permissions that a lot of these request into your environment as well. The next few sections are pretty similar across Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. They give us an idea of the total amount of storage in each of these environments, the top users, the top OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint sites, etc., and also the type of activity that we're seeing with those users. So if we look at mailbox storage, we can see that these are the top users in the environment, as well as the overall storage. So if you're seeing we've got 20 or 2.5 terabytes of data in the environment altogether, that brings up the discussion, how are we protecting that? Microsoft is not responsible for your actual data. They're responsible for keeping the service up. So do you have an archive platform in place, something like Mimecast, or are you using a backup product to back up your mailboxes, and that in case there's an outage and you need to be able to restore data as well? So that's some nice conversations we can have around that then as well. Then we can look at the individual users and all their mailboxes there. We can look at their quotas, the amount of storage that they've got, when their last activity date is, and then it also filters down by users that have got less than 5% mailbox storage available. The email activity is just how users have interacted with their mailboxes over the last 30 days. So how many mails have they sent, received, meetings created, what licenses have they got assigned? So sometimes we find that a user has got maybe like an E5, but all they're doing is sending email, and we're not seeing any activity across SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. So does that user then need an E5, or can we look at something like an Exchange Online Plan 1, which is going to work out a lot cheaper? Then mailboxes and groups. So here we can see a list of all the shared mailboxes, what the size of those mailboxes are. Is there any licensing assigned to those mailboxes? What we find a lot of times is users get offboarded, but companies still want to retain their data, so they convert into a shared mailbox. but sometimes the licensing doesn't get removed. A lot of times sign-in is still allowed on the mailbox, which you shouldn't need, because once it's a shared mailbox, you would assign delegate access to those types of mailboxes anyway. So that helps us to identify areas where we can clean up from a security side, and then also a licensing efficiency side as well. And then the rest is just a list of all your room mailboxes, if you've got equipment mailboxes, distribution groups, 365 groups, etc. as well. Then archive mailboxes. So these are all users that have archives in place. Do they have auto-expanding archive? If their archive is getting quite large, are any of them near their quota? We can see now all of that data from there, and if there's anything that needs to be actioned, we know which mailboxes need to be sorted out. It's also useful in terms of what compliance or what data retention policies do we have in place. How long are we keeping email for in an archive box? If you have a third-party archive solution like Mimecast, for instance, do you need to be keeping all of this archive storage in Mime or in 365 as well? And then lastly, just a list of the top users and how much archive storage they're utilizing at the moment. Then SharePoint, very similar thing, top SharePoint sites, your overall SharePoint storage, and then your different SharePoint sites, what your allocated storage is, how much you're utilizing, and how active those sites are. So, how many page views are you getting on there, the amount of active files, etc. And then the activity stats is just, interesting, that didn't pull through. Okay, never mind. But that should show us what the activity of each of the users is like in SharePoint. So it'll show data like how many files they viewed, how many files that they've synced to their local machine. Are they sharing data externally with users? And that's quite useful when you want to start talking about data compliance. Are you locking down your SharePoint environment that users can't share that data, or how are they allowed to share data, etc. Again, OneDrive, similar thing, your top OneDrive users, and as well as your total OneDrive storage in the environment. And then for the individual users, we can see the amount of SharePoint storage used. And again, you can sort it. So here we can see Colin is quite a big user of SharePoint. And then again, with the activity stats, is just how users are interacting with the data that they've got in SharePoint as well. So how many files are they syncing locally? Are they editing, viewing files, and then sharing data externally, etc. And again, it's useful to see if there's no last activity dates, it means these users are licensed for this product, but they're not using it. Again, this comes down to the type of licensing that we maybe need to look at for different types of users in the business. Then Teams, we can see the total amount of Teams channels in the environment, how many are active versus inactive. If you've got a lot of inactive channels, maybe we need to look at cleaning that up. How much data is in there? Do we need to archive and offboard that, and then remove those Teams channels as well? And we can see the activity based on the amount of active users and messages going around in those Teams channels to get an idea of what's going on in those Teams, in that Teams environment. Then the user activity is just the amount of users or the amount of messages and meetings that users are attending and sending in Teams with their activity dates as well. And then the device usage is just how are how's everyone utilizing Teams across the different platforms. So we can see that in this case, the majority is across Windows and Android, but we can also see Mac, iOS, and web. And then there's also a breakdown of per user on the different platforms that they're utilizing Teams there as well. If you're utilizing Teams Voice, then we can get a list of different phone numbers, what call queues, auto attendance, things like that, what type of Teams voice are you using? Is it direct routing? Is it calling plans or operator connect, etc.? A list of everyone's phone numbers with their voice routing policies and any additional details on their voice routes and policies, etc. as well. Licensing, here we can get a list of all the different types of licenses that we've got in the environment and how efficiently are we utilizing those. So for instance, if you've got, in this case, somehow there's an over provision, so we've actually got more users assigned to licensing than we have licensing available. In other cases, we've got underutilized licenses where we've only got 10 out of 50 assigned. So it can then help us make better decisions on should we be reducing, should we be increasing, or should we be changing the type of license we've got then as well. The license details here is essentially just a table of what we're seeing in these graphs over here. And then the license user details is quite nice because here we can see the licensing that's assigned to all the users. And then also if there's any users where their account has been disabled, but they've actually still got licensing assigned. Something else that I've added recently is this inactive users based on whether they've had activity across Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. So where we're not seeing any activity or we've last seen activity more than 90 days ago, that gets flagged and put into here. And that then allows you to go and hopefully clean up a lot of the licensing that is now not being utilized. And either these users have left or these users were provisioned and maybe they didn't join the company or they only lasted a month or something. And we never ended up offboarding them correctly, whatever the case might be. And you can go in here and then review that and remove those licenses if necessary. Then under Defender, here we can see your secure score with some recommendations, how you compare to other tenants globally, as well as other tenants who've got a very similar seat count to yours. And then a list of the recommendations on here, which is essentially what the same information that you would see in your secure score in the Defender portal as well. But then you can actually see whether these things have been implemented or not. And it also gives some recommendations on high priority items, ones where you can get the most points, for some quick wins in getting your score up if you wanted to. Then also any security alerts that have been generated, we're able to see that. Have they been resolved? Where were they generated from? This is nice because sometimes we see a lot of alerts being generated, but they're not sitting as resolved. So is anyone looking at these alerts? Have you considered outsourcing that to a SOC service? Because a lot of times to sit and just go through logs all the time is not really practical. No one has the time for it. So is it time to start thinking about a third-party management service for that? We can also look at your email policies. This is going to be dependent on, again, your environment. So if you've got Mimecast already, this might not be super applicable to you because Mimecast is already handling the majority of that. But it's also, if you are utilizing it, just good to go through the various policies that you have here, as well as checking any of your in and outbound connectors. We've actually had quite a few conversations where they look at this and go, I don't even know what that service is. I don't know why it's there. So it's good to review why you've got these inbound and outbound connectors. It could have been legacy and just no longer required, and that can be cleaned up. And then also just to go through your transport rules, just to make sure that you're not bypassing any of your anti-spam protection for things that shouldn't be, or just bypass for no reason, for example. Then if you're utilizing Intune, there's quite a lot of stats that we can pull over here around your different devices that you've got in the environment, the different OS versions that they're on. So we can see there's quite a few different Mac versions as well as Windows builds in the environment, and then the device details of each one of them. So there's actually quite a lot of info for each of these things that gets collected. So we can see the type of manufacturer. It'll pick up your model number. I forget the name of it, but your service tag, essentially. And you can see whether this device is compliant, which is especially important if you're enforcing compliance policies in your environment. And then we filter that down further as well across your different compliance policies that you may have in the environment, and how many devices where we're seeing non-compliance or errors, etc., that you can then go and take action on those devices. It might be a case of a user received a new laptop and his old laptop was never removed, and that's why it's now showing as non-compliant. If you're utilizing the Defender for Endpoint through Intune as well, we can now pull all of these metrics through as well. How many devices have got real-time protection enabled? Is there anywhere we should worry about where maybe the firewall's been disabled or the signature is out of date that needs to be updated? We can see all of that info in here now as well. We can also then take a look at your policies. So again, this is your compliance policies as well as your different configuration policies that you've got, and then look at how they've been rolled out. Are we seeing any with errors when we're trying to deploy these policies? And then you can go in and look at fixing those particular issues. And then as well as apps. So if you're using it to deploy apps, do you have a high rate of failure? Is there anything that we need to look at there, as well as the different policies and configurations that you might have across the different platforms there? And that's pretty much the long and the short of this whole report. This last tab here is just a bunch of files that we collect from Microsoft, and then we just go and manipulate that data and make it more readable and user-friendly. So if you had to go pull this from a Microsoft API, this is sort of just the raw format of the data that you would get, which is not super user-friendly, especially now you've got to go manually convert bytes into gigabytes and figure out who's doing what there. The point of this report is now to make it super user-friendly and extract the key information for you to make decisions on. This report is also very, I want to say, dynamic in terms of I'm always looking at new things to add and edit and update as we go along. So as Microsoft release new things that we can report on, I like to try and include that as we go there. So if you have any suggestions, if we run this report for you, and you see something that, maybe this would be nice to report on, I'm always open to feedback and additional things that we can add to make this report better in the long run.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. Guys, as promised, if you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat and we can jump on them. We did get some questions before the session, which I can go through now, but lots of cheers and hearts for you, Robin. So it's obviously a technical crowd, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have been that impressed. But as you guys can see, it's not meant to replace like a tool, for instance, that's measuring ISO 27001, compliance, or this is meant to be like a light tool that gives you an easy view of your environment and allows you to, jump onto critical stuff. If you're doing an ISO 27001 rollout, then that's a whole nother story. You need specific tools for that, and as some of you know, that's a very hectic job all on its own, and with special tools along the way. One of the questions we've got is, if we don't have our Microsoft with Turrito, is there a cost associated with having this report? We don't. We only do this for Turrito Microsoft customers. We do it for other customers, and we just charge labor to set it up and go through it with you. But we wouldn't actually install it permanently in your environment unless you are a Turrito customer. So there is a small cost associated with it if you'd like this and you aren't a Turrito customer. but it wouldn't be permanently in your environment. And then the next question is, what permissions do you need to run this report in an environment? Robin, I think maybe you handle that.
So traditionally, global access was the easiest way to do it. Obviously, not everyone is comfortable with giving that type of access. So there are custom permissions that I can provide if you need to. But one of my latest additions is actually just doing it via a registered app. So I can give you a script that you can run, which creates a registered application with all the necessary permissions. I can give you a list of all the permissions that it will add. It then creates a self-signed certificate, uploads it to there, and then we'll give you an output of all the data that you need to send with me along as well as the certificate. And then I can use that to connect and run the report from my side. And then once I'm done, you can go in and delete that app if you need to as well.
Okay, so yeah, there are options if permission is tricky or complicated to get. But it definitely does need a high level of permission to pull all this data, which is not surprising because it's delving into all of these, areas of Microsoft, and as we know, the security requirements are pretty strict, luckily. Any other questions from the group? No? Awesome. I think we're ahead of schedule, which is awesome. I'm very happy to give you guys back your time, and hopefully you still have some of your lunch. But like I said, if you haven't joined these sessions before, this is what they're all about. Short and sweet. Hopefully you found it informative. If you've got questions, reach out to your Turrito account manager, or me or Robin. Oh, there are some questions coming through. Okay, guys, hold that thought. Don't jump off the bus yet. Michael has asked, how long does setup and reporting take? That's a great question. I wish we'd thought of that. Robs?
Yeah, it depends on the size of your environment. So it can take anything from 15 minutes to, I think the largest one I had to do was 5,000 users, and that took about 4 hours-ish. So yeah, it just depends on the size of your environment.
Kaylin, how do you keep costs low by providing the service for customers? Kaylin, I'm really happy you asked that question. This is something that comes up a lot. As I said at the beginning, Microsoft services are pretty commoditized nowadays. A lot of you guys will know from the industry that the margins are actually very low. We don't make a lot of money selling Microsoft licenses. So there isn't, I'm going to answer this question in a roundabout way. We're not incentivized to sell you guys licenses that you don't need. We're making our money from a rebate system and an incentive system through Microsoft. And there are a whole bunch of metrics very cleverly that Microsoft uses, which are not necessarily about an upsell. They do like an upsell, especially to E5. But there are plenty of ways that we make money that have to do with utilization of licenses and renewals. And adoption of new products, not necessarily selling you something, but if you've got a user that's traditionally only used Exchange and that user starts using SharePoint and Word and Excel and Copilot, we get rewarded for it. So what I'm trying to say is that we're not incentivized to upsell and cross-sell our customers on licensing. We really don't make a lot of money on it. So it's in our best interest to make sure that our customers have the right licensing for the job. In other words, and we do this all the time. Robin does this all the time. We might have customers that come to us and they've got 400 E5s. And at the end of an exercise like this, they've actually only got 450 E5s and 30 E1s and a handful of business standards. So we can chop and change, and we're almost incentivized to do that from Microsoft because it means that the customers are going to be using the stack more effectively. So that was a really long answer, Kaylin, but I hope it answered the question. And Mel is reminding me, I always forget stuff, that By joining the session, you are entitled to a free report in your tenant if you'd like it. And again, you just reach out to your account manager to get that. And yes, and Aaron's pointed out that one of the other ways that we make our money in this world is by getting solution partner designations, which does not largely have to do with selling licenses. It has to do things like upskilling our engineers. So we're constantly making sure that all of our engineers are Microsoft certified and stay up to date and add new certifications as much as possible. So right now we've got 5 out of the 6 solution partner designations that you can get globally. We're able to unlock more incentives, which means we can sell our licensing for less than some of our competitors, just being transparent. So that was a very last minute bunch of questions, but they were awesome. 1 or 2 more minutes. Anyone else want to throw one in? No, I don't want to push it. Everyone's got work to do. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Robin. You did an awesome job. Thanks everyone. Thanks all of you for taking time out of your day, and I hope you got a good lunch as well. And we'll see you online or in a meeting or at the next Bytes and Bytes session. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, guys. Good job, Robs.